pronounce the last name, I understand that. Call me Sam, that's fine. And I'm from the Department of Curriculum and Teaching. Currently, I'm doing my research on refugee education in the Midwest. So Kansas City, Kansas, Wichita, and all these areas, I cover them through research. And today, I'm here to talk about this book, how you can possibly use Uma's Long Run, because I'm from Eritrea, and this book, the writer is from Kenya, and of course the story, it took place in Kenya. So we have more similarities, and I'm going to talk about my experiences as well as how we can present this book as well, because I am from the Department of Curriculum and Teaching. So I think I'll say something about it as well. Since I'm working on refugee education, it's important that we talk about culturally responsive pedagogy. It makes a difference, because if we're going to teach this book in our class, through this book, if we're going to promote health education or talk about health education, I think it's important that we understand the background information in this case. So that is exactly what I'm going to do today, and I'll show you a sample lesson plan. Of course, it's not, I wouldn't say that's the best, but somehow, guiding, and feel free to revise it, but it might help a lot for you whenever you teach health education through this book. It's going to make a difference, I believe, or it will help you to teach in a way which is appropriate for everybody. I want to thank you for really taking time to come here and talk about internationalizing our classrooms. I really want to thank Professor. She was so fantastic, the way she presented the concepts, internationalization versus decolonization, decolonizing the curriculum, internationalizing the curriculum. America is a very great country. The whole point is trying to bring everybody to the same pool so that everybody feels a sense of belongingness, nothing else, a sense of possession. And I think in order to do that, it's important that we internationalize our classrooms, and that as part of it, I'll talk about this book. So before I say something about it, whenever we are ready to teach a book or health education through African novel, students might wonder where Africa is. I believe most of them know where Africa is, but they might have some misconceptions about Africa, thanks to the media. Sometimes I call them fake news because they don't report the truth due to various reasons. We are scholars, so we cannot be politically correct. I'm sorry about that, but I just want to tell you that sometimes wrong information is given to our children through television. Like, Africa is usually associated with conflict, violence, disease, people are dying everywhere, and they may have this kind of misconception. I'm not saying all of them, but some of them may have this kind of conception. And I think it's important that we clear that in advance before we teach them health education through this novel, African novel. And I want to emphasize that point because sometimes what the media tells is not always right. We cannot take that as always right, but we cannot control what our children watch at home as well. And due to that reason, it's important that we shape them when they come to the classroom. We try our best to really mold them, nurture them, and try to shape them the way they should think. Like we always say critical thinking, right? I mentioned earlier Michael Apple. Michael Apple is from Wisconsin University, a very, very popular professor. He's written, I think, more than 20 books or so. And Michael Apple, in this area, in the area of education, he talks about knowledge construction and nurturing children through the knowledge, like, involving them and trying to help them to have a positive attitude towards everybody and everything. And I think that concept, that idea is very important, which we need to practice in our classroom, I would say. And in order to do that, clearing the prejudices, stereotypes, and the misconceptions would really make sense. If I were you, like the way I would teach this is, I would follow Paulo Freire's model. Paulo Freire is a Brazilian author. He's got this very interesting book called Pedagogy of the Oppressed. That's the title of the book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. It's a very wonderful book. Now, Paulo Freire says we should not pour the water into the empty vessel. We should not give the learners everything we have. They know something, they have some prior knowledge. Let's give them a chance to explore ideas. Let's give them a chance to explore topics. That's what Paulo Freire says. And in fact, maybe you know Chomsky, Noam Chomsky, my very favorite scholar, by the way. He said, in fact, we should not pour the water into the empty vessel, right? The empty vessel, even the vessel, it may be leaking, like water could come out. And in that case, Chomsky says, we will have nothing left, because if water is gone, then it is gone, we can't collect that again. And so he believes that we need to equip them with knowledge, but that knowledge should come from them. So I would simply ask them questions freely. What do you know about Africa? Anybody who can show me where Africa is on the map? Okay, yeah, just feel free. Instead of telling them, all right, guys, wait a minute, let me tell you about Africa. See, what do you know? What we call the communicative approach. Of course, I understand that communicative approach is culture bound. In some cultures, some children coming from Ethiopia, for example, some children coming from Kenya, I know, and Eritrea, they have this phobia. Their parents tell them at home, still here in the United States, do not speak before others because they will judge you. So be humble, don't talk, don't participate, group discussion. No. The parents say, what we expect from you is nothing but good performance, 100 out of 100, that's it. You see, if you get that, if you come with that result, we welcome you. But talking too much and etc., that doesn't make sense. That's what they tell them every night, because I meet them, I'm one of them. So we have some kind of gathering. In Kansas City, we usually meet with the parents, including with the immigrant families, and that's what they tell them. I disagree with them, but it's very difficult to change this attitude overnight. Like you cannot say, hey guys, you cannot do this. Even science doesn't support that. It's very difficult. Through course of time, I believe it could change, but for now, it's important that we understand that the communicative approach by itself, like involving every learner, could be culture specific, is what I want to say. Don't be surprised if some children do not participate in the group discussion, what Freire tells us, right? Because we should let them discuss and ideas should come from them. But some of the children may fail to participate because of their cultural background. I think it's important that we understand that sometimes. However, by involving them, involving everybody as much as possible to talk about Africa and what we think of Africa would really make sense. And then that way, we can help them to have a positive attitude towards Africa and Africans as well here in the United States. Well, that's not the only thing. I should not blame the media for everything, right? The children having this kind of attitude. It's not going to be fair. How about cultural barriers? Cultural barriers. In the meantime, I'm going to talk about the book. I'm going to summarize Uma's Long Run. Do you know that in Africa, especially in the Eastern Africa, because the book was written in Kenya, as I said before, Children cannot talk to their parents about AIDS, HIV, sex. It's a taboo. Like children cannot sit and discuss with their children, with their parents. That's really a taboo. You can't even mention the name sex or AIDS. So there is lack of communication there, which we find, and that is what I believe a cultural barrier. And in addition to that, the way people perceive AIDS, do you know what they think? Because most of them are Christians. Of course, there are also some Muslims. They believe, well, anybody who is cursed by God will be the victim of the HIV, the AIDS. That's what they tell them. So the children believe that, okay, well, I'm not cursed. I go to church. I'm free. Nothing will happen to me, including the teens, the teenagers, including the adults. That's what most of them think. I wouldn't say everybody, but most of them think that way. And that kind of discussion takes place over there. When they go to church, because as I said before, this is a very important factor, religion. It's a very important institution in Eastern Africa. Do you know what they teach the teenagers? No sex before marriage. No sex before marriage. And during sex or sexual intercourse, do not use condoms. God doesn't like that. Never, ever do that. So the children are in trouble because in a real life situation, you know, because of their age, I'm sure they want to have friends, they want to go out and play and etc. But the pressure is there. So, well, one of the teachings is do not use condom. You can see how they will be victims in this case, right? And then do not have sex. Maybe they're going to violate that, but they will not tell their parents because of the age factor, as I said earlier. But do not protect yourself from these deadly diseases would not really make sense, but you can understand the cultural barrier. So I'm not blaming the media for everything, but the cultural barrier is there. And I hope we understand that background a little bit. I believe because of this, according to WHO, the World Health Organization, they believe that 470,000 people died from AIDS in 2018 alone. But since 2010, we see some kind of decrease or decline in the number of AIDS patients. I would say one of the reasons, which you did not maybe read in the book, is the public awareness. Public awareness is very important through the media, through the government's media, particularly the governmental support. However, it's good news that it's still declining. But if you go to the remote village, like the book, you know, it took place in a village called Koromo. Koromo is a village very far, very remote. So if you go there, people talk only about God, religion, and something like that. You cannot talk about the problems you have, the diseases like AIDS or sex. It's not common. You can't do that. And so that's what happens. In those remote areas, we still have these problems. And some of our students may have come from those remote villages. So I think it's important that we understand their perspectives, right? We put ourselves into their shoes and try to understand how they think about it. That's what first and foremost we need to change, right? The way they think, the way we should frame them, the perspective needs to be changed before we go and rush to the knowledge making. The knowledge making is going to be, you know, like AIDS is bad, it's going to kill you, so use this, do that, and etc. Well, I think it's important that we understand the perspectives of some of our learners. That's what I want to say. Yeah, okay, okay. Please.
What kind of medium can you share with us to get the knowledge about Africa and all those cultures that are in, because Africa is not one country.
Exactly.
There are many countries,
Absolutely.
and I suppose many cultures. What is a medium?
The
knowledge for us.
Yeah, the medium, you mean the language that I use?
No, like the medium we can use, like, I don't know.
To access the different cultures, right?
Because, you know, if I don't know the culture, how can I be open?
Absolutely.
How can I see the barrier? How can I see that there's something happening?
Absolutely. I agree with you. That's Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much, Charlotte. Yeah, I hope you got the information that you need. But I would also say this, I think you're absolutely right that we cannot generalize about Africa. There's no African culture. There will be different cultural practices within Africa. As I told you before, I'm specializing in culturally responsive pedagogy in a classroom in the Midwest. So people come, some come from Ghana, for example, and others come from Ethiopia, from Kenya. More or less, they could have similarities, but there will definitely be differences. So what I would do is, I think I would try to know who my students are, where they come from. And then I would try to either visit our website, in this case, the African Studies website, to get more resources. And then I would also Google to find more about the students. And as Paulo Freire tells us, I would invite the students to tell me more about their cultural practices, not only to the teachers, but to the other students as well. I would invite them to talk about, for example, Professor raised earlier about the food, the meals, different kinds of meals, right? I know in some African cultures, some students do not maintain eye contact. It's a taboo, like to your teacher. If you maintain eye contact when you talk to your teacher, you're disrespecting your teacher. This is what they think. So they will talk to you keeping their head down. They are not rude or they are not lying, but they want to respect you, So in order to understand that, I think you will see like there will be some practices there which they are going to do. You can ask questions. Why do you do this? How does this happen? Can you tell us? Can you tell the whole class? When they feel comfortable, I'm sure they will start sharing these practices. That's what I want to tell you. I had a chance to talk to some immigrant students from Wichita middle school, not the elementary one. And what they said was they are more than willing, because in some schools there are international clubs. I think she was mentioning earlier before, the teacher. And through those international clubs or multicultural clubs, the students can share their cultural knowledge or cultural practices, right? Some of them are afraid to speak because of their accent. And I said, why? I talked to them. I said, why? I mean, why don't you share when you have the opportunity to do that? No, it's because, sometimes the accent is a little bit different. I want to be like them. Yeah, you will be like them one day. You're going to speak that, but this is who you are now, okay? So feel free, they will understand you. Are you sure? They're not going to laugh at me. They have this kind of, because they are, I would say, children or not matured enough. I would understand you. I can express my feelings through the accent that I have. As you can hear it now, I don't have problems with it, but to them, it's going to be a little bit different, I would say. So I think inviting them to talk about their cultural identities, about their cultural practices would really make sense. And in addition to that, maybe to the African Kansas City website, I would like to add some cultural practices of the Eastern Africa, part of my doctoral dissertation. I think I can do that too. I can add the list of things, that the way people act, like keeping their head down, not maintaining eye contact, and etc. That might help a lot. That's what I would say. Thank you for that interesting question. Appreciate that. Okay. I don't know how much time I have, but this is a very interesting talk. So according to who, the reason why people in Africa, because we're talking about the book now, a little bit about the book, they become the victims of AIDS or HIV is because of lack of awareness of limiting the exposure to the risk of getting the AIDS or the HIV. So the awareness is not there, as I said before. Do you know that some people, you may have read this in the book, Uma, the writer, the author talks in the Uma's Long Run. She says, people do not call it AIDS. People call it, if you have read the book, slim. Because when the disease kills you, it makes you very thin, very slim first. So people are afraid even to call the name because they feel like they're going to catch it, or they're extremely afraid to talk about it. So the author uses the term slim because that's how people use. And I have a similar experience in Eritrea as well, that people do not call it, but if somebody is getting, slimmer and slimmer, losing weight, here I'm sure we want to lose weight because we do a lot of exercise. I was in the gym this morning, losing some kind of weight. If you lose weight there, people suspect that you're having, so some of them may not even talk to you. Some of them may not even touch you. This is because of lack of awareness. However, I should make a confession here. I'm not talking about the big cities. Big cities, Addis Ababa, Nairobi, Kampala, and the other big cities, Johannesburg in South Africa, and I'm sure they may have the awareness, most of them, all right? I'm talking about the remote village because this book was written about a girl who was living in a remote village, however. That's what I want to say. Great. Next thing, okay, let's come to the book now. So Uma's Long Run, this is the book, right? Uma's Long Run. It's a very interesting book, actually. It was my first time to read it, this time after when I was preparing for the presentation. But the book is really interesting in many ways because it teaches us, it touches different subjects. It comes across different topics there. First of all, it tries to capture the reader's attention and emotions by providing the perspective of a girl in Kenya. Kenya, when I say particularly, Koromo. Koromo is the village of the village where the girl belongs to. Okay, Uma is the girl in this case. And yes, because the girl, after losing her parents, because her dad used to work in a city far from her village, where Nairobi. You may have heard about Nairobi. He used to work in Nairobi. For some reasons, he was sick, but he didn't talk about it for a long time. And his wife could not know what was going on in the village. So she got it too. She got the disease, through him, she got the disease, and finally they die, both of them. And when they die, but before they die, Uma, her best friend, lost her parents in the same way. And she started to think about the disease. What is going on here? What is killing the people? Okay? And then she said at some point, this is what children do. Children are easily impressed by what they see, by what's happening around them, I believe, the environmental factor, right? She said, I want to be a doctor. I want to solve this problem. I want to be part of the solution. That's what Uma says. But unfortunately, of course, she had to go a long way in order to achieve her dreams because of cultural pressure, especially discrimination against women. All right, women in some remote villages of Africa, they're supposed to work at home, only domestic work. They can't go out. If they are 15, sometimes 14, they have to get married because that's the bride, that's the families, they feel pride to get their children married. If they don't do that, then if she goes to school, so always the pressure is there, and she resists that. She really goes against that kind of pressure, cultural pressure, definitely. And then at the end of the day, I don't know if you could imagine a young girl bearing the responsibility of the whole family after her parents died. Because, okay, the grandmother was there. If you have read the book, the grandmother was there. Her siblings were there at the same time. But indeed, it was very, very difficult for her. I would imagine. She did it, but I would imagine that for a young lady trying to bear the responsibility of the whole family, she challenged it, but she had to go a long way in order to do that. You see, this is what the book tells us about. In addition to that, yes, this was what I told you about lack of awareness in the village, because we are talking about health education right now, right? Lack of awareness in the village appears to have impacted all the residents of the village, I would say, in this case, Koromo, according to the author, because they didn't know anything about it. Like, if her mother knew that HIV could be transmitted through sex, I don't think she would have sex with her husband. I think she would stop him, because she didn't do anything. She even never, she was a very hardworking woman. She never left her village. However, she got the disease and she became the victim as well. And she died, you know. And also one more thing, we have this gender disparity there, you know, gender inequality, which we need to work on a lot. The mother cannot say, or the wife in this case cannot say no sex. She cannot, she doesn't control her body, which is very horrible, definitely. Something we also need to address, right? Whenever we teach our children. Maybe in some cases in the United States with the immigrant families, we may see that, because the father is the head of the family, what we call the patrilineal system, and the father makes most of the decisions. And I think that needs to be changed, and that is being reflected in the book as well, is what I want to say. But lack of awareness mostly was the one that affected them. And here we go. So the story, according to the author, mostly took place in the 1980s and 1990s. I think now we are in the 21st century, right? Different time, I understand that. However, during that time, the stigma around HIV was great in the village. The name of the village is Koromo, okay? That they did not even want to call it by its name. Instead, called it Slim, because when it kills you, it could be a different disease, by the way, that makes you slim, and so it may kill you, or for some reasons you're very slim, but people suspect you. So people were afraid, that stigma was there, you know, to call it by its name, the disease. And of course, there were misconceptions about the disease as well, that it attacked only to those who were cursed. It attacked only to the people who did not go to church. And by the way, the influence of religious institutions in most of African countries is very, very tremendous still. I don't know if you heard this or not, but a month ago or so, there was a crisis in Ethiopia. The Orthodox Christian, okay, it's the biggest institution, again, religious institution there. They had some problems with the government. 40 million people came out to protest in support of the church. So whatever they teach in church, you can imagine how powerful that would be. They would listen to them, whatever they tell them. And it's sometimes I believe it's important to involve, in these cases, religious institutions to the efforts of elevating the problem, right? Elevating the disease, I would say. And yes, so there were misconceptions. And information was not available as well. And no conversations, as I said before. You cannot talk to your parents about the disease. In fact, you cannot talk to your parents about sex. The only order that is given to the children is to the adults, particularly teenagers, no sex before marriage, period. And do not use condom. That's not told by the parents. The parents do not talk about condoms. You know, they don't have the courage to do that. They don't have the courage to have communications. They hear that in the church. So in the church, one of the teachings is it's a taboo to have a condom whenever you have sex, and you could see that that aggravates the situation. And people are afraid to volunteer to have out their health, to find out their health status. They don't want to go to the clinic and find out if they're okay or they're not okay. They're extremely afraid of it. All right, I'm talking about the 1980s and 1990s. Not now, things have improved tremendously, but since we are talking about the book, that was what happened during that time, and that's what the book shows. So what can students learn from the book? First thing that we need to talk about is attitudinal change, right, towards the disease. I wouldn't say here, even the African students in the United States would have similar experiences right now. Of course, there is discrepancy in the time that we are talking about, but it's important that we teach them, we reiterate the information that there should be attitudinal change, okay? Some kind of having positive attitude or discussing and trying to overcome cultural barriers, not only about AIDS now, the cultural barriers, like, you know, like one of the points I mentioned earlier, not using condoms. How practical could that be? I mean, let's be open, let's be frank, because we don't see them what they do. And age is a very important factor. So by hiding themselves from us, why wouldn't they do that? I mean, you know, because they see people around them having friends and, you know, stuff like that. So they might do it. So it's a good idea to remind them that, well, you should not do this, maybe because of this, but if you think it's right, then I think attitudinal change, knowledge is very important. We need to equip them with knowledge, and I think they need to understand that. Unsafe cultural practices. Some people believe that if they go and get traditional healing, so there are some doctors, they are not certified by the government. The government doesn't know them, all right? But they call themselves doctors, traditional doctors. So people go there and then they tell you, they say free of charge, like it's free. So anybody can come there and you know, get your medicines. And when you do that, you have to contribute little money, however, when you enter there. And so they do something and then they tell you, oh, I think you are about to have AIDS. Not you have AIDS, but you're about to have AIDS. You don't have it yet. However, you're safe to come to me right now. So you see, you're very lucky, you're not gonna have it, and I want you to take these medicines, and etc. That unsafe cultural practice, this kind of traditional healing process should be stopped, and I think that knowledge is very important. I don't believe that would happen here in the United States, but I believe knowledge construction, as Professor said earlier, also that we need to involve all of them to participate in there, and we need to tell them that knowledge is a power, right? If you have knowledge, if you know about something, then possibly, you know, the mistakes that you would make could be minimized. I mean, not much, so you can contribute a lot. And we can probably from the book, students can learn that they need to be goal-oriented people, right? The goal-oriented person. That's very important, because if you have a goal, you're trying to reach somewhere. I know how much parents invest for their children here in the United States, because I see freshman students coming to the university, you know, they come with their parents. I see how much they care about them, they invest. So whenever, if they're going to give value to what their parents are doing, I think it's important that they are goal-oriented people. And that point, that notion is being mentioned there. Our students can learn a little bit about it too. Families' influence on their children and schools' influence on behavioral change. I think we need to focus on this, right? Because teenagers, wherever they are, even including in the United States, they want to try something which we tell them not to try sometimes. They're very eager to do that. For example, no drugs. Why do they tell me no drugs? They want to test it, you know? And don't smoke, because it's very bad. Okay, this guy tells me don't smoke, but he smokes. I saw him smoking once or twice. Maybe they don't tell you, but they want to try it, right? And then having friends, unprotected sex. I'm sure all this will come to their mind. And so I think we got to be very careful with the way we influence them. That's very important, because Berdou, he's a French philosopher. His theory, cultural reproduction theory, he believes that schools play a key role in reproducing cultures, because when they go there, they learn something different, you know, a different culture. What kind of culture do we want to teach them? You know, respecting one another, diversity, like what Professor mentioned earlier, right, about the different meals and etc. What do we want to teach them? Our influence is very important. And our influence towards them, like making them aware of the different kinds of diseases that they would possibly be exposed to, right? I think it's important that we influence them in a positive way. And I just want to mention that. And then probably I'm coming towards the end of this risk behavior analysis then that the book tells us. It's important that we mention examples of risk behavior like unprotected sex, risky sexual behavior. I'm sure our students want to try this if they are teenagers, and I think it's important that fighting illegal activities, it's important that we teach them, we influence them so that they are not part of all these unnecessary activities, I would say. Okay, thank you so much, but I have one thing to show you, the lesson plan. I don't know how much time I have, because you may have 10 minutes? 5 minutes, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Megan. What was that? Where was that? Yes, here we go. I don't know if you can see this. So we've prepared the lesson plan this way. We thought standard one would work here. And the materials that you need, if you want to use the book to teach your students, you're welcome, because it will be available on the website, right, Charlotte? This will be available on the website. On the global health. Thank you. I have the video. There's a very interesting video about what I've been talking, and I think you can access that. There's a link. And then the Venn diagram handout, it's available as well. And of course, this is also helpful, the presentation, because it gives us a little bit background information about the book and about health education in Africa. And this will be the objectives. Mainly, it's going to focus on the risk behavior analysis. Yeah, so we can do this. I think it's a good idea that we follow the communicative approach, even though it has its own drawbacks, but still inviting them to talk about health education, especially about the book after they read it, will be a good idea. And so they can talk up what they feel about it, right? What Paulo Freire tells us. How do they feel about the book? How do they feel about the girl, in this case, Uma? And so I think it's important that we understand this. Everything is detailed, and some guided practices are given. Like what I said, the group work or some kind of class pair work would help a lot. And of course, this is part of the formal and informal assessment, which you can find it there. Yes, it's a good idea that they talk about HIV or AIDS, what their attitude is towards them. I would also add this. I would ask the students what their contribution would be to make the world safe, right? To make the world safe. I wouldn't say only Africa, but to make the world safe. So I would ask them to contribute something, to say something. All our students, now I'm not talking only about students from Africa or immigrant students, but all of them, all our students, I think they can discuss and talk about it. I hope you will find it very useful. This is what it is like. If you have any questions or anything you want to say, feel free to email me. You can reach me through Charlotte. I can also give you, I'm sorry, I didn't post it here. I can give you my email address as well. And I think anytime we can talk about it. As I said before, lesson plans are prepared in a way, because I'm from the Department of Curriculum and Teaching. I've been a teacher for more than 15 years as well, just like you. So lesson plans are prepared in different ways. For example, here I'm teaching at Applied English Center. We prepare a lesson plan. We follow a different method because we have students from Vietnam, we have students from India. We are very careful with that concept of culture. Do they feel comfortable to do this in a classroom or not? Because the purpose is to help them learn something, but I should do it in the right way, not what the science tells me. Because the science could tell me something, right? Like use communicative approach, use task-based approach, group work, classwork. Yeah, that's great, but do they feel comfortable to do that or not? I think that will be a great point to consider, I would say. And thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.